it elapses, we're assigning temp timer to the sender, and we're going to print, instead of printing the name, we're going to print the tag text. All right, verify that. Now you see we do have initialize ran first bar, and then last bar, which that's how it should happen. Hey, what's up, folks? Today is July 13th, 2025. Today I'm going to talk to you about args arguments. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go over to the Tradestation forums, and I'm just going to share with you a little bit about what it shows there in lieu of arguments. And this is, again, I'm not a professional programmer, so I'm learning a lot along the way. I appreciate one of our contributors for asking me this question, so it gave me a chance to dig a little deeper. So when you're talking about arguments or args was, I think this specific question, args are essentially arguments. So as I understand with programming, it can kind of come in two varieties. You can have them as inputs into your program, or they can be inputs into a function or a method. Here, more specifically, when we're talking about args, where it's set up here as a variable, it's used in event handlers, and the event handler is essentially going to have two arguments. See here, it's going to have the sender here, and it's going to have args or arguments, which gives information about the actual event that was raised. The sender has information about the object that sent the argument. So I thought this was pretty cool when I actually got down to actually learning about this, because you can manipulate a few things once you figure this out. So again, I really appreciate this question, because it's given me the opportunity to strengthen my programming skills with Tradestation EasyLanguage. So and apparently with an event handler, it's got to be, the method event handler has got to be return void, a value void. So when you have method, you have what it returns is void, then you have the method name, and then you have the two arguments. One is the sender, one is the information about the event that was raised. And this is something that we talked about last week with initialize and uninitialized events, specifically talking about the initialized event. That in the designer generated code here, you see. So I won't go back over that, but the initialized event happens when the chart starts up. So I will kind of go over a little bit about the initialized event as I just kind of go over this session for today. So here we go. So here's a chart, and we're looking at ES. This is futures, but we're not really doing anything specific with the data right now. What I want to do is I have something. It's a show me. It's titled args. We're going to add it to the chart. Is it already? Yeah, it's already added. But anyway, it's not doing anything because we don't have any code on here. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the arguments, or the args, and then we're going to do some manipulation, and we're going to kind of get a better understanding of how it works. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here to the toolbox. We're going to add 3 timers. And again, when we're talking about event handlers, specifically when we're talking about like args, arguments, method event handlers, there's not a lot that's going to happen with these things right now. The market depth, or the time in sales, or the position, there's not a lot that's going to happen right now. So we need to use something that can trigger an event right now, which is a timer. So we're going to add 3 timers. Tell you what, we're going to do this. We're going to have this timer over here. We're going to come over to properties, and then under properties, we're going to set auto reset is equal to false. The interval will be 1 second. That's fine. Enable timer 1. Okay, so we're going to go over here to the event, and we're going to create an event handler. We just go into this open space here, double click, and it gives us a method event handler. Again, you see here the syntax or the structure of the method event handler. We have to call it a method. This is what it returns, which is void. It doesn't return anything. This is the method name. Here we have 2 arguments. One is the sender, one is the information about the event that was raised. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to come here, right click it, copy, and then we're going to right click, we're going to paste, and we're going to paste. Okay, so now we have 3 timers, okay, but they have the same setup except for the name. Okay, so we're going to go to the second one, and then we're going to go to properties, but they all have the same event handler, right? You see that? And I think that's what's kind of cool about understanding the arguments that are associated with an event handler. because it has the same method event handler, right? Okay, so now that being said, let's change the property. Well, the properties is already, the only thing that's really changing is the name, so that's fine. All right, so it's the same thing for the timer one copy 1 and timer 1 copy 0. They just have different names. The rest of the information is the same. They all have the same event handler. All right, so watch this. What we're going to do is we're going to start all these. So we're going to start our timer 1.start, and then we're going to do timer 1 copy dot start, and then timer 1 copy 1 dot start. Okay, so now we're going to verify this. All right, and so it's actually running and it's not resetting, but it's not doing anything. So let's print something. I'm going to print the number 1, and then we hit verify. Open this up, turn this on, and you see it printed 1 3 times. That's cool, right? You say, yeah, that's cool, Eric, because we had 3 timers. 1, 2, 3. They all printed. They all had a method event handler that handled the timer elapse, and every time when 1 fired, it printed the number 1. That's cool, except we don't know which is firing, and we want to know which fires. All right, you say, all right, well, Eric, how do we figure that out? Well, that's where you have that cool bit about knowing who the sender is. You know, there's the arguments, right, about information about the event that was raised. Just so happens there's not a lot of information that would be in the system about a timer event being raised. So what we're going to do is we're going to using EL system. Okay, and then so when we come down here, we're just going to I'm just going to show you, right? So EL system timer elapse events.args. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to paste it right there, and then hit a dot, and nothing else comes up, right? Timer event. All right, so you see nothing else comes up. But if you were to be using something like tsdata.marketdata. What's something market depth provider, market depth update reason. This has reasons for the market depth provider being updated. So we know that this has reasons. When we hit the dot, you see there are other things that come up using the IntelliSense. There's other dot operators that comes up after the market depth update reason. So again, for a market depth object or component, market depth provider, for this event being raised, you have reasons. Just so happens when you have timer elapse event, when you're looking at that timer elapse, it has no reasons. It's just the args, right? Nothing comes after that. Okay, nothing comes after that. Okay, so we don't need to belabor that point. Just know that if you are using a market depth provider, positions provider, if you're using any of those other providers where you have an event being raised, this args is where you will get information about that. So say I'm getting off topic here just a little bit, but just follow me. All right, so if we have market depth provider, if we come over here, we have a updated event. We're going to go in here, and then we're just going to do args. Let's see. And sometimes this is a little slow. It was slow for me yesterday. Let's use using TS, using the namespace. That way we don't have to repeat everything. There we go. All right, so you see the args, which is this variable here. It's just a name, args. But when we type it in right here, and then we type the dot, you see that time it didn't come up, right? But the first time it came up. So again, as I understand it, there's the IntelliSense with the development environment, but it should be picking up that you have a dot and that this variable has more information from the market depth updated event. So let's try it again. If args dot, nope. Let's slow it down. Let's see if I'm going too fast for it. Nope. Okay. All right, let's get that out. We're going to re-verify it. Now let's try. Okay. Now without the if, it's coming up, but that doesn't mean anything because you should be able to use if, right? All right. So, but anyway, for market depth provider, the args does have information. It's got information such as a participant, the quote, the reason, the name. All right. Now, as I was studying this, I said, as I understand, they really don't want you to change. Well, you shouldn't change this. You shouldn't change this information, right? Definitely don't want to change this and this. You can't, because then it won't have the information that it needs. So I'm curious though. Yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting that, like, when you go to the designer generated code, when you have the updated event, which is market depth provider. Did I not? Yeah. Let me see. There it is. Updated event plus equals. Typically, when you write out a method that will have inputs or arguments that goes into it, you have to put parentheses and you have to put what those arguments are. But for here, when you have this kind of updated event, the event handler, you don't specify with parentheses, you don't specify the inputs. So I think that's a little bit interesting. That's something that I don't understand, but maybe somebody understands it and you can fill me in. Okay. But even though it didn't have any spaces for arguments, it still has arguments that must be defined. So for instance, when you go to dictionary and then you search for, we'll just type updated. And then we'll find market depth updated events. You see here, or market depth provider updated. Typically what you do is you come in and you just copy this and then you would paste that. You see this here, EO system object, sender, TS data, market depth updated event args, right? You take that and you just copy it in and you paste it right here. Okay. So if you're trying to figure out what's supposed to be in the event handler for your updated event, you can just come over to dictionary, type it in, find what you are looking for an updated event for, and then copy and paste the arguments. Okay. All right. So, and again, you can see here, sender, these are parameters or arguments. The sender is the object which raises the event, and the args, that argument is a market depth updated event args object containing specific data. Okay. So like I said, as I was reading it, it made sense to me that I should be able to change the name of this. I can't change this because it needs this timer elapsed event args class. It needs that. It needs this object class to define this sender. So we can't change the class, but we should be able to change the variable. All right, so let's continue on. I'm going to clear that out. All right, so just re-verify that. You see, we get all those ones again. But again, like I say, hey, Eric, how do we know which one fired? Well, we know that when we have this updated event here, that the object that raised the event is here. The object that elapsed is here. That's that guy. This is information about it. So in order to find out who fired, we just say, who is the sender? So and the sender is right here. But I think at one time I was able to type a dot, use a dot operator, but again, that's acting a little funky, but I don't think that's the way. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a timer, which is an object, a class. All right, and then timer's the class, and then the object we're going to do is a temp timer. Okay, so we're going to say a temp timer is equal to the sender. But we can't just say the sender. I think we can, but because this is a timer, but just like when you're using a vector or you're pulling information from a vector or a collection, you have to as type it, even though it's coming out as like you're using something from a vector and it's a double, you still have to say as type double. So still want to as type this. It's a timer. This sender is a timer. I'm going to assign this object to this temporary timer. That way we can use the information there. So now we're going to say, and there's two things I want to try here. So we're going to try it. All right, so first we're going to say, instead of print 1, we're going to print the temp timer object dot name dot toString. Okay, verify. Look at that. We got the name this time. Timer 1 copy, timer 1 copy 1. All right, so if we want to take it a step further, we will say, oops, hang on guys, I'm getting a call. All right, I'm back. Sorry about that. So hopefully I kind of remember where I was, but let's see. So I know that we did the print statement here. We printed the timer 3 times. We printed the name of the timer. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to add to each of the timers. We're going to add the name. So we're going to go to the timer 1, and we're going to do tag text. Tag text, we're going to do initialize. We're going to do everything in lowercase. And again, for tag text and when you're lining up strings and that kind of thing, when you're trying to find matches, it needs to be the same. You know, watch for the spaces, watch for the capitalized letters, watch for all that kind of stuff. So I just try to keep mine very basic, lowercase. Timer 1. All right, so we're going to go to timer 1 copy, which this will be the second timer. And the tag text there will be first bar. And then timer 1 copy 1. We'll call this second bar. Or last bar. Okay, so we're going to have a method event handler for the analysis technique. So when we initialize the analysis technique, double click that there, get a new method event handler come up here. So here, this should be the first timer that gets started, because this is really like the first thing that happens. So there we're going to do the timer 1 start. And then so if we have, so the once block we're going to have here should happen first at the very left hand side of the chart. So we're going to leave this here, first bar, and then we're going to take this out and we're going to make this if we're on the last bar. If last bar on the chart, then we're going to start this last one. Okay. All right. Get this out of here. And that is for the market depth router. All right. Now we're going to verify everything. All right. So let's redo that. Okay. Now you see how this happened, which I've got to play with this a little bit more, and I've got to reach out to the forums because some of this is making me question what I know. Because again, as I understand, when you first bring the chart, when you first bring the analysis technique onto the chart, it should run the initialize. It should run this initialize block, right? So this should be timer 1. And timer 1, remember, says initialize. Okay, let's do this. Let's so when the timer elapses, whether it's the timer 1 copy, or timer 1 copy 1, when it elapses, we're assigning temp timer to the sender, and we're going to print, instead of printing the name, we're going to print the tag text. All right, verify that. Now you see we do have initialize ran first bar, and then last bar, which that's how it should happen. But I've seen it do different things. You see here, instead of giving us the initialize block first, it gave us the first bar first, and then the initialize, and then the last bar. So why did this first block run and elapse first, and then the initialize elapse second, and then the last bar elapse third? I've seen this one and this one flip-flop. I've seen it flip-flop on my larger code, and we're seeing it flip-flop here. Now watch, I'm going to run this again, and it's still doing first bar, initialize, last bar. Let's do this. So if it's the last bar, then we're going to we're going to clear the print log first, so that will clear before anything elapses. Initialize first bar, last bar. First bar, initialize, last bar. So they flip-flopped. Initialize first bar, last bar. First bar, initialize, last bar. Initialize first bar, last bar. Initialize first bar, last bar. Again, so it keeps flip-flopping. So again, I don't know where this is supposed to run. Does this run first, or does this run first? And just for clarification, when we go to edit studies, when we open this up, when we look at the, so we have user define number of max bars back. So this technique should only run once from beginning to end. Now we know that if we do an auto detect here, the analysis technique will run at least twice to find out how many bars we need for the max bars back setting, and then it will run its full time. Okay, so since we have user defined, this thing should only be running one time, and there shouldn't be any mix up between initialize or the one statement. So I don't get it. All right, so hopefully I can find out some clarification on that, and then we can do another video. In the meantime, we were talking about here about this variable of sender and this variable of args. This variable holds the information of object. This variable holds the information about the event happening. We know that we don't have any information for the args, right? When we hit dot, we don't really have any information there, but we do have information from the sender. I'm curious, instead of assigning a temporary, well, is sender a reserved word? I don't know, but if we in this local method, this is already an object. I don't know how come we can't use the dot operator behind this, because this is a variable of this object. And we should be able to use this right away. So let me think for 2 seconds. Yeah. All right. This is what I'm thinking about. Typically, when you make your own function, you do like method void x print log or something like that, and then you might have in here say once we're going to x print log. Okay, and then what are we going to pass into it? We're going to pass in the bar date time, and then so in here, this bar date time, this is a date time object, and that date time object will be called z time. Okay, so again, this is the variable name, this is the class type, begin, end, print x time to string. Okay, let's get rid of this. X time. No, oh, Z time, sorry. Okay, so you see what it did here when we ran the program. It ran this print log function, this print log method, which is essentially a function, but it ran this print log method, given an input of the bar date time, that first bar date time, which was some time ago. The last bar is 7:11 at 1700. The first bar is 7:3, 2:41 a.m. All right, so this method had an input argument of bar date time. That input argument for print log, it was moved up here to Z time. So we took Z time and just dropped it right down into our block, right? Our block of code. So how come you can't take this information here, this object, this variable, and just drop it right down here? And if you just drop it right down here, it will be sender, which is this object timer. And maybe it won't do it because it doesn't know. Let's do sender equals sender as type timer. Because now it's taking this sender here, dropping it down. It essentially drops it down to right here. But first, it's got to run this, which says that, oh, that sender is a type timer. And now we're going to assign it back to the variable name of sender. And so now we should be able to use this here and print sender dot, nope, can't do it. Can't do it. All right. That's just the way my brain thinks. So, like I said, that doesn't work, but unless we had a variable named sender, and then our new variable named sender will get this sender as type timer and assign it to this sender, and then we're printing. I feel like that's going to confuse the system, but no, and it didn't like that. Okay, so we're going to do z sender, and so z sender will be equal to timer, and then z sender dot, yeah. So now we have everything, right? But that essentially that's the same thing as using temp timer. All right, I mean, it is the same thing. All right, so the last thing I want to try here is if we just make this, we'll just call this timer of interest. Will it let us modify, use that, and then no? So we're going to do timer of interest, and then we're going to print the sender, because this is the temporary timer. This is our object that was the sender, right? As type timer assigned to our temporary timer. Temporary timer tag text to string. Okay, so that works. Okay, so again, you can change this name here just because it's a variable, just because it's a name. Same thing, you can change this RRR, change it to whatever you want to. But you just need to know that if you do need to use this as a for the information that's in the args, like in your market depth updated event handler, then you need to use this same variable name, use the dot operator, so forth and so on. Okay, so we made this a little bit messy, but if you followed along, then you know exactly where the mess came from. Let's see, anything else? We'll get rid of this. We'll get rid of this, and I think that's it. I think that's it for today. So I appreciate everybody for coming on board and hanging out with us for today. So again, this is good stuff. This is everything that you want to know about arguments and inputs, parameters. Well, not everything, but anyway, you know what I mean. We had a good time. Thank you for joining. All the new subscribers, watchers, commenters, Discord members, I appreciate you. We're up to 375 members, channel members. That's great. Guys, let's master EasyLanguage so we can conquer the market. I've been your host. I'm Eric. I'm out. Peace.